Hi, I'm Jason from StrataGames, and today we're playing some more Pauper. This is Jund Tokens. This is a deck that I brewed myself that I played previously on the channel. Go ahead and check that out if you haven't seen it. We did pretty well with it, though, and honestly, I just really like the deck. I think this is the deck that I've brewed that probably has the most potential to actually be a contender. I'm still working to get a trophy with it, but I've had several 4-1s with it. This deck is basically what would happen if you put Writhing Chrysalis, the Scourge of Pauper, into Kuldotha Red. So we're trying to go wide as possible. We have Kuldotha, Bushwhacker, and Galvanic Blasts for some removal. Goblin Surprise is a nice new one from Foundations that can either pump our creatures if we have a bunch, and also makes us more creatures if we don't have any. But then the main way to win is Rites of Initiation. Discard any number of cards, preferably 6, 7, 8, or 9, and then you pump your entire team that much. Even if you only have 2 or 3 creatures, this could often be lethal with as many cards as we draw. Now, a lot of Rites decks that I've seen are more mono red or something like that, and they don't keep enough cards in hand for this to be more than +3 or +4. But we are running the absolutely broken Ichor Wellspring, Fanatical Devotion, Deadly Dispute package to keep our hand stocked, so we can very easily have 7 or 8 or 9 cards to discard to that Rites. We also have some Chromatic Stars. We are a 3-color deck, though we're only splashing the green for Writhing Chrysalis and for Khalni Garden, because this is just a land that makes a token, so why wouldn't we? So we don't need a ton of green mana, but we are technically a 3-color deck that needs a lot of red pips as well, because in a specific turn, it's not unreasonable to think we might want to Kuldotha Rebirth for 1 red, kick a Bushwhacker for 2 red, and Rites of Initiation, that's 4 red. So we really want to make sure that we have a lot of red, as well as making sure we hit our black and green, and I think we've been able to smooth that out pretty well. Chromatic Star is a big help for that. Usually this is just going to be a cycler that turns into your black or green, or maybe an untapped red mana, but there are also games where we absolutely cast it and attack with it, pumping up a Chrysalis or something like that. But for our mana base, a little all over the place, I will say. We have 4 black-red lands, but only 2 of them are Geothermal Bogs to be fetched off the Oliphants, because we also want artifacts for Galvanic Blasts, so we have 2 Drossforge Bridges. We do have 1 Wooded Ridgeline. Again, green isn't a primary color in this deck, though it is an RGB. That's not a very good joke. We have 4 Great Furnaces, also for artifact synergies, 4 Khalni Gardens because it makes a token, 3 mountains and a swamp, and then a Twisted Landscape, which we don't have a forest to fetch. I think that's fine because we have 5 green sources already, plus the Oliphants, plus our Deadly Disputes, plus our Chromatic Stars. But the Twisted Landscape is just a nice card that can cycle if we get a little bit flooded. Last time we played the deck, we actually did get quite flooded a couple games, and so I swapped out 1 mountain for the 4th Bushwhacker that I was missing, and I haven't really missed that land. Our sideboard is pretty much the same. We do have 3 Rotten Reunions for graveyards. This can also just make 2 creatures out of nowhere at instant speed, so that you can pump them up and use them as lethal attackers. We're playing 5 Red Elemental and Pyroblast effects because I think blue is probably, anything blue is like our worst matchup, whether it's Mono Blue Terror, Blue Red, Blue Black Control, anything like that. We do have 3 Gorilla Shamans for if we go up against Affinity, and then a couple Cast Into the Fires and Electrickeries for more artifact hate or more go wide hate, so that we can actually compete against a Kuldotha deck. The thing that I like about this deck is it draws so many cards, it's quite resilient to even 1 or 2 board wipes, and it gets around some of the sideboard cards that people bring in. Usually they see Kuldotha, and so they bring in all of the cards they would bring in against a mono red deck. The life gain cards they will often bring in, even a Weather the Storm gaining 15 or 20 life, is not going to necessarily keep them alive because we're able to deal so much damage. We were able to do that in one of our matches in our last video, which is pretty sweet, winning through 2 Weather the Storms. So we are able to negate that, which is great, but we still suffer from the board wipes. Any -1 or -2/-2, Breath Weapon or anything like that, we still get hit pretty hard by, and those are definitely a lot of the main cards that people are bringing in against those decks. So if we ever get to a meta where mono red isn't that big of a contender, and so a lot of that go wide hate dissipates from sideboards and even main decks, this deck will probably be even better. But right now, I still like where it's at. So let's jump into some games and show you how this deck plays. Round 1 here, we get not the best hand ever. 2 green, as I said, green is our splash color, is not great, but we have fixing from both our Oliphant to find both red and black, and a Chromatic Star to probably make an extra red out of that green mana. So it's not an amazing start, but even with 2 Khalni Gardens, I'm able to get down an Ichor Wellspring. The Oliphant can find a black source for the Deadly Dispute, and after that, we're probably cooking with gas. So I think we're going to keep this one. Seems okay to me. Our opponent mulls to 6, which obviously is a boon. We we play Khalni Garden, and they are on something with Jostforge Bridge, whatever that deck may be. We're just going to cycle the Oliphant, get down our red-black land right now. We drew a Fanatical, so more card draw is never bad. Jund Wildfire could be Broodscale, or could just be like mid-range. I will say we attacked for 0 to send a message, but legitimately, this is not fully a meme. I think attacking with your 0-power plants when you can, and it's not going to cost you that plant, your plants or your spawn or anything like that, I think it's good because our opponent will get into assuming, oh, we're just goofing off, we're attacking for 0, blah, 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 blah. And then we could hit them with the Rites of Initiation out of nowhere, even if we're attacking with 1 or 2 0-power plants, power plants. It could still get them out of nowhere. So I legitimately think attack all, even if you have a bunch of 0-1s or anything like that, is a good idea, even if you don't have a Rites or not planning to use it. Just so that your opponent assumes that nothing is coming out of these 0-1s, and then suddenly, even if they're dealing 2 or 3 damage, it can really throw them off balance. So we're going to continue sending that message, hitting them for 0. They're going to rumble, and they turn up nothing that quite tells us which way they lean, although Eviscerator's Insight's usually Broodscale, and they play a Duress, which definitely tells me probably Broodscale. They take our Deadly Dispute, which is annoying, but not altogether that big of a problem. We have double Galvanic Blast for their Broodscale, which is pretty good. We're going to Fanatical this Ichor Wellspring, draw a bunch of cards, just play our Furnace, play a Chromatic, and we're going to play out a couple Chromatic Stars. I probably should have left up at least 1 mana for a Galvanic Blast, so not really sure why I didn't do that. I would call that a mistake. But luckily, they just Writhing Chrysalis us, luckily, and now have an enormous creature. They crack a couple spawn for an Ichor Wellspring, so they have a 4/5 here, so we can't even bolt it down. And we crack our Chromatic Stars, trying to draw something. Our hand's looking pretty awkward. We could go for this Bushwhacker, but they have a big creature. Usually you want to turn green mana into red mana, since green's the least helpful. It did bite us a little bit because we drew a Writhing Chrysalis after turning both of our green into red. But if we had drawn a Kuldotha, we might have wanted to Kuldotha and then also Bushwhacker and then also Rites of Initiation. So I think it was probably right to mostly make red mana out of this, especially since we also wanted to have Galvanic Blasts up. But it was a little awkward, so not to waste that mana, we just Goblin Surprise main phase here, which is a little awkward as well. But as long as they can't wipe our board, we can maybe go for a Bushwhacker Rites next turn, which could be not too bad. They have a Makeshift Munitions, which honestly is going to be really annoying. They sack something, and they have a lot of expendable cards, and they're able to pick off one of our guys. So that's going to make things quite a bit more challenging, and they just right away start with a Wellspring on a token. They're going to attack for 4. Our tokens are a precious commodity, especially when they have this Makeshift up, so we got to just take it. And they play another Wellspring, so they only have 1 mana here to off of their spawn in order to throw something with the Makeshift. So I'm going to Galvanic Blast their Eldrazi spawn, so if they have to sack it now, throw something with the Makeshift. They do kill a Goblin token, but it's possible, especially if we get that Kuldotha off the top, that we'll be able to kill with a lethal Bushwhacker Rites combo here. So, but if we let them block with the spawn and then throw it at a different token, I don't think there's a way we're going to do that, because that essentially is taking out 2 of our guys. We do just draw a Jostforge Bridge. I will say, this is a deck where you always want to hold the land until you have decided it is correct to play it. Usually, you don't want more than, I would say, 4 or 5 lands. If you go really late and are drawing a ton of cards, obviously maybe you get up to 6, 7, or 8. But don't just play out your lands, because that could be a card that you need to pitch to your Rites in order to deal lethal. So always do your math first. I will say this one, we did a lot of math. We determined we could not get there. They are tapped out and everything, but I could kick a Bushwhacker right here, and that's 4 damage, and we have 3 attackers. Then we can Rites of Initiation, discarding 4 other cards. 3 attackers is 12 damage, plus our 4 is 16, so we could put them to 4 here, but we're not quite going to get there. We don't have 5 red, so we can't Bushwhacker first. So yeah, there's really just no way we're going to be able to win here. I could map token up, maybe even deal 1 more, but that's 17 at best. So because of that, we decided it's best just to play Writhing Chrysalis, go wider, and then try next turn. Of course, this is awkward because they're going to untap, have their Makeshift Munitions mana up again, and be able to pick off more of our guys, but we simply weren't going to win this game, so we might as well not. I didn't even play the Jostforge Bridge there because I really don't think I'm going to need more mana necessarily. It is awkward if I want to double Bushwhacker next turn, but I think it's more important that I hold the card for an extra damage off of the Rites, so I'm going to just hold it in hand for now. They play a Wellspring and then Cleansing Wildfire. So, which is nice. They're tapping out of a lot of their cards. They do have 2 mana up, so they can ping off 2 of our guys. They also have a Chrysalis, which they can block. So we have to account for them taking out 3 attackers here, which leaves us with 2 plus our Bushwhackers, about in the same position we were at last turn, unfortunately. We draw Goblin Surprise, but that's not really going to do anything this turn, so I think we have to pass again, unfortunately. Our plan here is to Goblin Surprise on the end step, and then Bushwhacker Rites and hope that we can get them there. They play an Evolution Witness. We have a Galvanic Blast for it, but they have so much mana it's not going to matter. We're just going to Goblin Surprise on the end step here, see if they do anything, and they do not. We get a Wellspring, so with the Witness and everything, I know that we probably won't have lethal here. I will say, as long as you have the 2 mana to spend on the Wellspring, it's a free card as far as playing it and keeping your card count for Rites of Initiation. So I only need probably 2 red for Goblin Bushwhacker and 1 red for the Rites. So we're going to play the Wellspring. Maybe we draw something good. We draw Fanatical Offering, which we decide to go for on the Wellspring. Again, I don't think we're going to be able to win this turn. But we do draw Kuldotha finally and a Khalni Garden. So it's possible we can win next turn. Of course, we need to not die. But we're just going to play out a land. Now that we have 7 cards, anytime you're going to discard, obviously you can play a land. You don't want to discard cards that you're going to use. So we're going to keep the Khalni Garden for next turn, Kuldotha for next turn, and then Bushwhacker. That's 5 creatures out of nowhere, plus we already have 7 Rites of Initiation, even for, what would that be, 4 or 5? It's still going to be really potent, and if they don't have anything to kill all our creatures here, it could be really good. They adapt the Witness, bringing back an Ichor Wellspring. They do pick off a token with the Ichor Wellspring that they already had. Play a Chromatic Star, play that Wellspring again, draw a card, play a Broodscale, but they just pass back to us. Well, no, they sack a Makeshift. They Makeshift again with the Wellspring, pick off another Goblin. So again, down to 5 creatures, and they have 3 with 3 mana, so Makeshift could pick off 3, so that's 6 creatures they could block. But we do have 10 creatures with this Kuldotha and this Khalni Garden. I will say map tokens are really good in this deck because if you have the mana to spend to crack them, if you draw a land, that's an extra damage that you do off of Rites. And so we decide to go for that. We get a Great Furnace out of the deal. And so we gotta, again, do our math. Kuldotha on our map, and then Khalni Garden into Bushwhacker gives us 10 attackers. They can deal with or block 6 of them, assuming they don't have a breath weapon, which if they do, we're screwed. So 4 of our attackers are getting through, and we've expended Khalni Garden, Kuldotha Rebirth, and Goblin Bushwhacker, and then we'll expend Rites of Initiation. So that puts us from our 8 down to 4. That's 4 damage each for the 4 creatures getting in, which is 16 damage. But don't forget that we've kicked a Bushwhacker here, which means that's an extra 1 damage for each of them. So that's 20 right there. I will say, if you don't like math, this deck might not be right for you. There is a lot of math making sure that on any given turn you can win, and sometimes you can just go for it. So if they don't have anything beyond this Makeshift, we should be able to kill them right here. And so we're going to go for it. We play our Garden, we play our Kuldotha, and we kick our Bushwhacker. We swing with the team. We even have 1 extra green mana, not that we can do anything with it. They block a bunch, and we Rites of Initiation, pitch our hand. They start picking off creatures with their Makeshift munitions. They have to sack some lands for it. That's the good thing. Even if they do survive here somehow, they lose a bunch of lands and lose all their creatures because we've pumped their power. But luckily, we are able to just barely kill them. 21 damage since we had 1 extra power from the Bushwhacker that went unblocked. And got them against Broodscale with 7 cards in hand. So it is possible to beat them. So that was game 1 of this league. Doing all of that math, very complicated, but a pretty good game, I will admit. Really would have been a lot easier if they didn't have that Makeshift, but it made for a pretty interesting game. From the sideboard, I wanted to bring in a couple Rotten Reunions because they showed Eviscerator's Insight, which has flashback, and they showed the Witness, which can bring cards back as well. So I wanted to have a couple Rotten Reunions for those. And then I also brought in a couple Cast into the Fires so that we can exile their bridges, ideally, while they're wildfiring them to get a nice 2-for-1. And so I took out 2 Goblin Surprises. I just think there are flex slots. They're really good at what they do. They're good at versatility, but they are usually expendable. So we cut those. And then if you notice, we didn't cut anything else. We accidentally submitted 62 cards, so we're at 55 left in deck after drawing 7. Not what you're supposed to do, but ultimately probably won't be too big of a deal, unless we're 1 card away from the card that we want to draw. This hand is okay. Usually what you want in this hand is red and black mana is most important, which we have. You want an artifact or a Khalni Garden, so that's something to sacrifice, and then you want a Deadly Dispute. And then I like to have a Bushwhacker, a Rites of Initiation, or a Kuldotha. Something that's going to be key in getting us to critical mass of creatures, or be able to be the card to kill our opponent, like the Rites of Initiation. Chrysalis is a good card for that too, but it is 4 mana. It's a little bit more expensive. It's not going to give us a explosive start. It's just going to be a very nice transition to the mid game. So this hand looks totally fine. Maybe a little slow because of the double tap land, but definitely not one we're going to be shipping. So we're going to play out our land. We have 2 geothermal bogs here, but I will say you almost always want to lead on the non-artifact lands. We only have a couple artifact lands, but in case anybody's brought in artifact hate against you, you don't want to lose your land as early as possible. You want to lose it later in the game. They do have that Cleansing Wildfire right away, and we're not able to interact with that, unfortunately. But we get to play our second land at Chromatic Star. We haven't hit a third land here, but hopefully that Deadly Dispute will help us get there. They play a Wellspring, so we do have to dispute main phase here so that we're able to hit our land drop. Luckily, we get a Great Furnace and a Chromatic Star, so we're able to play those out, not have to discard any cards, and we can even hold up a Galvanic Blast in case they go for the combo right here. They don't. They just start with a Cleansing Wildfire. They did Deadly Dispute on the end step, so a million cards, and then another Wildfire. We have this Cast into the Fire, but we only have 1 treasure for it. I really wish we had 2. We would have definitely been able to set them back quite a bit, but unfortunately, we did not. We're drawing more card draw and not lands, so unfortunately, we have to keep Deadly Disputing in our main phase. You want to Deadly Dispute over a Fanatical Offering in these situations, because in the case that we don't get a land, or even if we do, we want to dump as many cards from our hand as possible, not wasting them, and so the treasure is more important in this situation. Luckily, we again find our land, Great Furnace. We have these treasures, which will cast our Writhing Chrysalis in a bit here, but we have 9 cards. In this deck especially, you want to stay really high on cards, 7 for your Rites of Initiation, but you really don't want to waste cards, because any card, even if you're not really going to use it, is going to be fodder for the Rites later. So do not waste cards. Obviously, always a good practice, but especially in this one. So I just go for a Cast into the Fire on one of their Slagwood bridges. They've already gone through 3 Cleansing Wildfires, so I don't think that's going to matter too much. And I just want to not discard cards. So I also Rotten Reunion away their permanent card in the graveyard, since that's what they can get back from the Witness later. And we do want to leave up a Galvanic Blast with our treasure, just in case they go for the combo here. They do play the Broodscale and adapt it right away, and I realize that we have Metalcraft, but not if we sacrifice this treasure to pay for the Galvanic Blast. So we actually can't respond to the Broodscale adapt, because they could just adapt it again. And so that's pretty annoying. So we just let them have it, and then they have the Glee. So I have to Galvanic Blast the spawn token, since again I can't kill the Broodscale. If we can kill the spawn and they don't have another way to make a spawn or kill a creature, then we can at least stave off the combo for a bit. Unfortunately, they have the Tamiyo Safekeeping, keeps the spawn alive, and is going to make them have an infinite powered creature. They also have a Chromatic Star and a Bridge untapped, so they have a couple colored mana as well. As they start looping, they go for a Wellspring, Chromatic Star, crack a Star, play a Deadly Dispute, make some mana, play a Nicker Wellspring, and then they pass to us, not having anything. Unfortunately, we draw a Bushwhacker, and we had to use our treasure, so we can't even get a Chrysalis down, because we don't have that green mana. Usually, that's not a big deal. So we just have to cast a Bushwhacker, so we have a blocker, because remember, Decayed Zombies cannot block. And we're going to Fanatical Offering it when they attack, as long as they don't kill it. They even have their 4th Cleansing Wildfire, but I could cast into the fire, and maybe it would be right to, but they already have 7 cards in hand, now up to 8 with the Cleansing. And I figure I need to draw cards off of our Fanatical, more importantly than getting them off of 1 land. They duress us, we just let them have it. They take the Rites of Initiation, we block, and we get to Fanatical Offering our Bushwhacker, which unfortunately gives them more spawn. Every time any creature dies, they get a spawn. They cycle a landscape. We also did not hit another land here. We're going to Rotten Reunion away one of their cards, just to have more creatures to sack if we need to. We don't hit a land drop, so we Fanatical Offering. We find our Khalni Garden, green source finally, also a chump blocker for the Broodscale. So we're going to pass back to them, hold up our Fanatical again. And obviously, whenever they find an outlet for the Broodscale and Nadir's Nightblade or Makeshift, we're going to die. And there it is. They have the Makeshift right there. But in the world where they couldn't find it for several turns, we could potentially play a Chrysalis, sack a spawn to the attacker, play another Chrysalis. We could maybe, if we find a Rites, get around the Broodscale, but unfortunately that did not happen. And being someone who never learns from his mistakes, once again submitted 62 cards, forgetting to de-sideboard those 2 cards. but we get a pretty reasonable hand here. We get a turn 2 Kuldotha Rebirth off of this Chromatic Star, which is a great start in general, but especially against Broodscale, which is a fast combo deck, but generally they're winning in the mid-range, right? They're usually winning turns 4 to 6, as opposed to, turn 3, unless they're really lucky. So having a Kuldotha Rebirth down early, it could just be a really nice way to apply a lot of pressure. So we start with our tap land, play the star, and just turn it into a 3 goblins. We also draw Rites of Initiation, so it's totally possible, and I've had a game before where we could just win right here, and because I could just Rites for 1,000,000. Now this is 3 damage, and we have a Rites for 5, which is an additional 15, so that's only 18. That puts them to 2, which if they have any way to block these creatures in the next turn is not quite lethal. So I attack with the 3 goblins, but ultimately I decide it's not worth it, especially if they even just have like a Galvanic Blast or a Snuff Out. Taking out one of the goblins, if we pitch our entire hand, we could be dead in the water. So I decide that I'd rather go for it next turn. And so instead, I'm just going to cycle this Oliphant, grab a Wooded Ridgeline, play that, and I can either go for a Rites next turn if I think it's lethal, or I can play a Writhing Chrysalis. They duress us, and I sort of regret not going for it because we lose our Rites of Initiation. We no longer have a way to kill them real quickly here. Would it have been right to do so? I don't know. If they were at 2 and we top decked this Galvanic Blast, obviously that would work out perfectly. But if we start top decking lands or whatever that doesn't deal any damage and they get a couple creatures down, it might not have worked out. So it looks like we probably would have won if we had done that. But I still don't think it was wrong to be more conservative there. We play our landscape and play a Writhing Chrysalis. The good news is we still just have 5 damage or up to 7 here with the Eldrazi Spawn. They duress us and take a Galvanic Blast. Luckily, they're missing land drops, so we're not too worried about them comboing here, but we certainly still want to leave them a Galvanic Blast if we can. We just play out our Star and then Deadly Dispute it. Stack a couple of our Spawn pre-combat because we just have them in 2 turns here, with our Chrysalis and Goblins dealing 7 damage total. So we play out our Chromatic Star, and we have even a Galvanic Blast to kill a creature or something. They do have a Chrysalis, so that's going to make it a little bit more awkward to get through, but on the end step here, we Finical Offering our Wellspring, draw a bunch of cards, we draw a Bushwhacker, and another Galvanic Blast. So we can just double Galvanic Blast them if we really want, or we can just Bushwhacker here. The Chromatic Star allows us to do both. We have enough red, so I figure might as well just go for the Bushwhacker and then finish them off with the Galvanic Blasts. Just in case there's any funny business. Not that I really expect anything other than maybe a Snuff Out. They do sack their Spawn, and I Galvanic Blast them, hit them for 2. I did realize that I had lost Metalcraft, but still able to pick them off right there and get the match. Back to 60 cards in our main deck. We'll see if we mess it up after sideboarding. This hand's pretty good. We have all of our colors of mana. Writhing Chrysalis for turn 4. We have a Chromatic Star if we draw any Deadly Disputes, which is mostly what this hand is missing. Rites and Goblin Bushwhacker is really good. We would love a Kuldotha potentially here, or a quick Bushwhacker. One thing that this deck is great about is that it can sometimes just do like the turn 3 Kuldotha Bushwhacker that you see out of mono red Kuldotha. Speaking of, that's what we are up against right now. So let's see which deck does it better. They attack and we decide to block. We drew our Deadly Dispute, so already things are looking up, and they don't play anything for 3 mana there. They did mull to 5, so we're definitely already advantaged, but mono red can definitely win off of a mull to 5. They have a Chain Lightning, and I realized I could throw it back with my Chromatic Star, so I thought about killing their Epic here, but actually they get to throw it back again, so don't really want to give them an extra Lightning Bolt for no reason. So we could take the 1 damage here. We decided to Goblin Surprise just to trade for 1, which I think is okay. They're behind enough that we don't want to have any creatures here, and we get a Kuldotha Rebirth. If we sack the Chromatic Star to the Rebirth, though, we actually can't use it to make red to Bushwhacker in the same turn. So a little bit awkward. As always, the mana is not perfect, but we can still just play out a Chrysalis here, and the next turn we can go for a Bushwhacker and Rites of Initiation, and just that will probably win. And if we happen to top deck a Mountain, we could even Kuldotha as well. They get a Clockwork Percussionist, but just have to pass us. We're just going to swing with our 2 attackers and just play out another Chrysalis. I figure if we get the red mana, we can go for the big attack, but otherwise we can probably just beat them with 1,000,000 blockers and 2 giant creatures. And they scoop right there, seeing that they're not going to get through 2 of this giant monstrosity. We're essentially playing a mid-range version of the same deck we're against. They're, of course, aggro, and so we want to just survive a little bit longer than them, and then we'll win through advantage. So I take out all of the Rites in this matchup because, yeah, we could win with them, but they're also going to have sideboard cards of End the Festivities, like sweepers, and so it's less likely. But also, if we just survive against their attacks, we'll be more likely to win through that. So we bring in a couple Gorilla Shamans. I always like them against red to pick off Great Furnaces or Blood Tokens or anything like that. And then we also get to bring in 2 Electrickeries and 2 Cast into the Fires just to take out a lot of those 1-power creatures. We also take out a couple Bushwhackers for the same reason as before. We just don't need to go as all in. We will just win the late game. So this hand's okay. We do have some of our sideboard cards. Gorilla Shaman's not bad. Electrickery is really good. Oliphant makes it so we have 2 lands. The double Chrysalis with only 2 lands is awkward. No Deadly Disputes, no really good Deadly Dispute targets. Goblin Surprise. This is where I don't really like Goblin Surprises. It's like, this would be better as just about anything else. But I don't think this is bad enough to get rid of, so we're going to keep it. It might actually be bad enough against red. They mull down to 6 again. So we're starting out okay, and we actually get a Wooded Ridgeline, a nice start to sculpting our hand better, because that means Oliphant can find our red source, and we can still cast these Chrysalises. They do go for a Kuldotha on their Clockwork Percussionist on turn 2 here, and then they get a Lackey off of it, which they play. Luckily, we have the Electrickery, which we're definitely just going to use right now. They even throw in an extra Clockwork Percussionist before they swing with the team. So we don't get to kill the Lackey, but we still get a nice 2-for-1, and they just scoop right there. I don't think they were necessarily out of it by any means. Our hand didn't look amazing. They have 3 more cards. They still attack for 1 here, but they probably were a little bit tilted, admittedly. So not the best showing of Kuldotha Red, but I will say this just proves that Kuldotha Jund is the way to go. Round 3, we get a pretty decent one. We get 3 lands, all our colors: Kuldotha Rebirth, Fanatical, Galvanic, and Rites. Looks solid to me. The only thing we could ask for is a Chromatic Star or a Wellspring to be able to use the Fanatical Offering on. They Thriving Grove on black. I assume this is probably another Broodscale deck, because if it was like Turbo Fog, Green-Black Fog, they probably would be playing the Gates because they use those to good effect. Either way, we want to go fast, so we just Kuldotha Rebirth our Drawsforge Bridge right away. We could get them with a faster Rites of Initiation. It doesn't look like we have much else to sacrifice to it, and this Fanatical Offering can get us value if we sack like a Goblin token to it, which we'll do if we have to. Unfortunately, immediately after making that decision, they play a Shambling Ghast, which is a nice creature that kills 2 of our Goblins, so that's a little bit annoying for us. Although they miss their land drop and they just pass. So that seems pretty good. Of course, we also set ourselves back a land drop, but that was for a pretty good gain. So we're going to attack with everything. They block, of course. We're not going to go for the Rites. And they, because they missed that land drop, are forced to just treasure token instead of killing off another Goblin, which is great for us. We do get to put down a Wooded Ridgeline and probably cycle our Oliphant here. Maybe get in a good attack next turn. They crack their gold, going for a Malevolent Rumble. And they just pick up another Thriving land and play it right away, not being greedy, taking their land. We cycle that Oliphant, attack for 2, play a Star, and we have a Fanatical Offering on the end step here. Gonna start the climb back up to 7 cards in hand, and then maybe we can Rites of Initiation at some point here. Draw 3 on the end step. Nice spread of lands and spells. We even get a Kuldotha here, so we're gonna play a Wellspring, attack for 2, and probably just Kuldotha. Obviously, a Bushwhacker would be great here, but if we can just Kuldotha and the next turn Rites them, that would be pretty sweet. So we're going to do that. We even draw Chrysalis for next turn. We're going to leave up a Galvanic Blast in case they're lucky enough to have the combo, even after, like, they kept a really not very good hand, and I think it was a 7 even, with only 1 land. So I assume there has to be a reason, and one of the reasons would be a potential turn 3 combo win. But they Deadly Dispute their Wellspring just to draw and pass back to us, so not looking that way. They even have to discard a couple cards, Makeshift and a Black Dragon Gate. We get a Chromatic Star, but we're going to swing for 5. Chromatic Star, like Wellspring, is a free card to play. We can just crack it during combat in order to cycle it. And so it adds just as many cards for Rites of Initiation. The reason we would want to do that is if we draw a Deadly Dispute, say, then we could also Deadly Dispute this map token in the middle of the combat to make our red mana that we can use for the Rites, and also draw us an additional card dealing 1 additional damage per creature. So we're attacking for 5. I don't really expect them to have anything here, and they don't block, so... And I totally just forget to cast Rites of Initiation, which is what the whole deck is for. Now, it's possible that they have something for it. They are red. They're Jund, so it's possible they have like a breath weapon or something, but probably should have just gone for it there. I will say we have triple Galvanic Blast and we have Metalcraft, so I could just burn them out. So I realized my mistake. I cast a Galvanic Blast, and then I realized, wait, what if they have Tamio's Safekeeping? They would have needed 2 Tamio Safekeepings to survive, and they still would have had to crack their treasure for that. But I realized I don't want to double Galvanic Blast them, have them survive, and then be able to combo me. So one of the sloppiest turns I've ever had, but we just pass, we hold up the double Galvanic, and they do go for Broodscale Sadistic Glee, and I'm like, well, I guess we might as well try to kill them now, because they only have 1 green, so even if they have 1 Tamio Safekeeping, we're going to be okay here. So that I have to have like a main deck Weather the Storm or something. So we Galvanic again, they crack some mana, but they ultimately concede. So not my brightest moment, not casting the rights, and then the Galvanic Blast mess up, but we got there, which definitely means I played perfectly. So as opposed to the first Broodscale deck that we played today, we didn't see any graveyard relevant cards, so I didn't bring in Rotten Reunion, and they're not playing Bridges, so we didn't bring in Cast into the Fire. So all I did was I brought in 2 Gorilla Shamans. I didn't even bring in all 3, because I saw that they had a Tree of Tails, which leads me to believe they probably are playing like, I don't know, 2 to 4 of those lands. Nothing crazy, but if we're able to pick off just 1 of them, it could be pretty good. So we add 2 of those and take out a Fanatical Offering and a Nicker Wellspring. Anytime our opponent is trying to just grind tons and tons of value, I usually don't want to do that, and I want to just be faster. So I usually take out a couple of these cards in those scenarios. We get an okay hand here. Gorilla Shaman could be really good, like I said, if it's able to pick off a land or 2. Otherwise, we're definitely lacking, but if we can get some card draw, this Rites and Writhing Chrysalis can maybe get there. Opponent also mills to 6. We're having a lot of luck with that this game, and they play Sylvok Lifestaff, which could get them infinite life, or we could blow up with the Gorilla Shaman. Play Chromatic Star. We're just going to Khalni Garden, and I'm going to throw out the Gorilla Shaman right now. Usually, I'd want to save it, but they don't usually play a lot of removal, and this makes it so I can blow up either of their artifacts, probably the Lifestaff, next turn with the Gorilla Shaman if we want to. They're going to Deadly Dispute the Chromatic Star in the main phase here and miss their land drop. I could just blow up their Lifestaff here if I want. I attack for 1 damage on 2 creatures. And I decide to take their treasure because they missed their land drop. It only costs me 1 mana, so I also can play something else. Hold up Galvanic Blast, for example. And then I can just blow up the Sylvok Lifestaff after, but I'd rather them not get like a Writhing Chrysalis next turn or something and save our mana with the Gorilla Shaman this turn. Tap for a green. We play a Khalni Garden, just setting up for this potential Rites. They find their land drop and pass to us. We attack with all 3 creatures. I could Rites for 6, 18, 19 damage, so I could potentially kill them, but after sideboard I'm a little worried that they could have something here. So we just decide to let them have it, and I just pass here. I wanted to basically blow up the Lifestaff, but they had Deadly Dispute mana on our turn, so I'd rather them use it on their turn and then be able to Rites on our turn to be able to finish them off. They just pass through their turn doing nothing, so we're going to go for the Gorilla Shaman. On the Lifestaff, they decide not to do anything, which leads me to believe they probably have like a Breath Weapon or something. But we're going to attack for 1 and once again decline to use the Rites. This time I think smartly, because if they have a Breath Weapon, we would be absolutely screwed. And we're going to play out a Writhing Chrysalis here. And after the Spawn Resolve, they do in fact have that Breath Weapon, so good that I didn't Rites of Initiation. We do get to Deadly Dispute for a little bit of value here, but we do have a Chrysalis left with just 2 power. They play a Shambling Ghast, pass to us. We got to rebuild a little bit here, but we probably want to start holding up some Galvanic Blasts as well. So we're going to play out a Writhing Chrysalis pre-combat in case they have anything to, deal damage to the Chrysalis or anything here. We're going to attack with it. They're going to chomp, eager to take their treasure. And I decided to go for a Deadly Dispute here. We didn't hit a land drop yet, so I wouldn't mind hitting that. And we do find a Geothermal Bog that we're able to play, still leaving up 2 treasures with our Galvanic Blasts, still leaving up 2 Galvanic Blasts with our treasures. And sometimes I don't want to be hitting our land drop every single turn. As mentioned, we did go down from 7 cards here, but it looks like we're just going to be winning with 2 giant Writhing Chrysalises rather than with a go wide strategy. So I'd rather just hit our land drops and be able to hit more Chrysalises and things as they come up. We could also potentially Rites of Initiation with just our 2 giant Chrysali to be able to hit pretty hard. They do play their own Chrysalis, so they're able to get some blockers here. We draw a swamp. We're going to attack with both our creatures. Another mistake I made, I probably should have played our third Chrysalis first, so that if they blocked with their Chrysalis, I could eat it, or if they just take the damage, I could deal additional damage. They chump one and don't chump the other, so I probably wouldn't have pumped anyway, but I should have certainly done it. They go to 13 here, and we're going to just play our Chrysalis and keep the land this time. We have enough mana. I don't think we need that one. They do duress, so again, we could lose our Rites of Initiation, but they take a Galvanic Blast. They have the Broodscale, and they have the Tamio Safekeeping. Once again, we have to throw the Galvanic. I could have thrown Galvanic at the Basking Broodscale. They could have adapted in response, sacking their spawn, but they would have gotten the spawn back. I threw it at the spawn, and so they Tamio Safekeeping it. They still could have just done the adapt, and it probably would have been better. They would have kept their Tamio Safekeeping in hand. Either way, they're able to get the combo online. Attack with their Chrysalis. We have to chump because now it's infinite power. We're going to Goblin Surprise here because our goal is to go around them now that they have two infinitely sized creatures. Get a Great Furnace, not what we want, but we have a Kuldotha, and we're just going to have to pass, hope that we can chump a couple here and then get enough card draw and maybe some removal to be able to get around them. They make a bunch of mana, Deadly Dispute their spawns, draw some cards, play an Ichor Wellspring, Eviscerator's Insight the Wellspring. They have a Breath Weapon to wipe all of our small creatures. Pretty annoying because it also makes them a bajillion 0/1s. Deadly Dispute, Flashback Insight, and we have to double chump with Chrysalises here, so we're pretty dead, but we go to our draw step anyway. They duress us, take a Rites of Initiation. We draw it back, but it doesn't matter. I definitely made some mistakes there. Probably should have Rites of Initiation at that one turn when they only had 2 mana up, because the best they could have had was like a Weather the Storm, which would have kept them alive at 6, but I don't think would have done much. And so it was right not to Rites the second turn, I think, when they had Breath Weapon mana up, but the first turn I think we could have won. So definitely a bit of a mistake there. Game 3 here. This hand's decent. We got double Bushwhacker and Rites, which is more than we want. Don't really have the fodder for the Deadly Dispute unless we just run out of Bushwhacker, but we have 3 colors of mana, 3 lands. I think it's okay to keep, so we're going to. Tap land for both players. We get a Fanatical. I cycle the Oliphant for our green and just play that out. Pass. Hope we draw probably like a Chromatic Star here so we can get a Deadly Dispute down. They gassed and once again missed their land drop. This is the second time they've kept a 7-card hand with only 1 land and a Shambling Ghast, which to me does not seem like a keepable hand, but what do I know? We play out a Bushwhacker because we're not drawing much else, so we're going to probably just have to Deadly Dispute it. They get a Wellspring and do hit their second land here, finally. And on the end step, we're going to crack the Bushwhacker. We draw another land and an Oliphant. We play a Wellspring that we draw. Get a Chrysalis, but awkwardly, we're only at 3 mana now for this turn, so we can't play it. Next turn, we can play something. Deadly Dispute on their Wellspring. They do hit their land drop and duress us. In response, we're going to Fanatical Offering the Wellspring. At least we'll draw some cards. If they want to take any of those, that's fine. They take the Rites, and then they duress again, and they take the Goblin Surprise over the Galvanic, which tells me that they are not ready to combo yet, or maybe they just have a million Tamio Safekeepings, but that they're more worried about us killing them, which could be good. They double Lotus Petal and then Weather the Storm for 7, and that tells me, oh, maybe they just wanted to cast a bunch of spells. I didn't even know they ran Lotus Petals in this deck. Obviously, just a version that they're running, but the Weather the Storm, it's good. But honestly, we don't care about it anywhere near as much as a mono red would. We can definitely beat them at 41 life, not a problem. We just need to get some good cards, and Deadly Dispute's a nice start here. So we're going to Writhing Chrysalis here and leave up Deadly Dispute. I could have just Oliphanted, but if they kill it or something, that's just kind of a waste of a turn. They have a Selvok Lifestaff, which could gain them some more life, and then a Chromatic Star, and pass to us. On the end step here, we have to use a treasure to use our Deadly Dispute, but I don't want to waste the mana or time that we have. So we're going to Deadly Dispute the map. We get another Chrysalis and a Galvanic Blast. Play our Mountain, play out our Chrysalis. And I could go for a Bushwhacker here, which I don't think is bad. Just hit for a lot extra little damage, but I decided to leave up double Galvanic Blast, which I think is not bad either. They are only at 2 cards, which is nice. They chump, get a treasure, and gain 3 life off of the Life Staff. But with 2 Galvanic Blasts, think we're in an okay spot if they go for a combo. They draw nothing and pass to us, apparently, and we get a Rites of Initiation. So we do the math. So we have 6 creatures. Rites of Initiation for 5 is 30 damage, plus we have 2 Chrysalises at 2 power, so that's 32 damage. So not quite there. But we could also Bushwhacker, which is 1 fewer card to discard with Rites, but it's 1 more damage from the Bushwhacker, so that equals out. And it gives us 1 more power from a Bushwhacker and whatever the Rites of Initiation damage is. So that would be 6 more damage total from the Bushwhacker, which would be 38 damage. And then we could do another Bushwhacker, which would be, I believe, 44 damage. So I think we had exactly enough, but we would have had to discard our entire hand, so we wouldn't have any way to beat their combo if they had it. And if they just had another Weather the Storm or something, they would have gained a lot of life. So we're going to go for a slightly more conservative play, try to win next turn. We're going to play the Oliphant, leave up a bunch of red mana, but we crack a couple Spawn to also buff up our Crystalline. Attack for 8 here, putting them to 36, and then next turn we can go for that big all-out attack. Of course, if I also had a Breath Weapon, we would have been totally neutralized by that as well. So this is another reason that we wanted to go with the Oliphant, was to play around the Breath Weapon. So we're going to go for the Bushwhacker this turn. They tap. They clearly have the Breath Weapon, it looks like. So we're just going to attack with these, not throw out another Bushwhacker. Pump up the Chrysalis, because it's not going to die to a Breath Weapon. And they do have it. Of course, sack your spawns to grow your Chrysalises. And I even Deadly Dispute the Goblin there. Sack the other spawn, and then count your damage. We have 21 right now. Rites of Initiation for 5 would be 15 more, would be 36. So Rites of Initiation would be 36. Oh, plus we have an Oliphant, would be 38. So I once again miss lethal. Okay, so this video is just showing you how poorly I am playing because I keep missing lethal. But it's showing you how good the deck is, because we were doing pretty decently despite the fact that I'm missing lethal, but also if we had not missed lethal a couple times, we would have an even better win rate. So the deck is good. I'm just still getting used to it. I've only done like 4 or 5 leagues with it so far. Just know that Rites of Initiation can win you the game in so many scenarios when you wouldn't think it. For me, I was like, oh, I'm hitting with 3 giant creatures. I can win next turn. Why would I even think about it? Well, I could have just won there, and I did not. And they were tapped out, so there was really no worry, unless they had a snuff out, which could have been relevant. We'll say that that's why I didn't go for it. They have a Writhing Chrysalis, and they even sack one at the spawn, knowing that 2 of our guys are going to have trample. I assume to equip the Life Staff to gain a little bit extra life. We go for the Galvanic Blast in response, though, kill the Chrysalis, and we're going to have lethal on them even without the rights. Round 4 here, we get a pretty risky one. There are some one-landers with a Chromatic Star that I'll keep, usually a Kuldotha as well. This does not look like a keepable hand. We have to draw a second land or we're absolutely screwed. So I just think we got to mulligan this. We get a pretty reasonable hand here, though. A little slow, but a lot of good value. We bid one of our lands because we have the 2 mana we need for the Deadly Dispute package. Keep our Galvanic Blast. They're on Mountain, Voldaren Epicure, so it looks like it could be Kuldotha. We draw a Great Furnace and just play our Ichor Wellspring. We draw a Kuldotha Rebirth, which is pretty good, and a Highway Robbery into a Sneaky Snacker. So, in fact, it's actually Rakdos Madness rather than Kuldotha. They attack for 1 off the Epicure, so we're down to 18. We draw a Ridgeline. We're just going to go for a Kuldotha Rebirth. They don't really have a good way to deal with our tokens, so if we're able to just get a Rites, maybe we can kill them pretty quickly. So we're going to do that, and then play out our Chromatic Star. I don't really want to Galvanic Blast either of these creatures, but we will trade one of our Goblins for the Epicure. Our Goblins are so much more valuable, but it's also, we don't want to take too much damage off of them. So they go for Vampire's Kiss. We're already down to 13, which is tough, but we do get to play a Writhing Chrysalis here, which can block Sneaky Snacker really nicely. And with Chromatic Star allows us to still hold up both Galvanic and Deadly Dispute, which is totally a nice thing to do. They attack with their Sneaky Snacker, and I decide to block. I know that they can certainly, and probably will, have a Lightning Bolt or something for the Chrysalis, but I want to get the Snacker down for another turn if I can, and I'm happy to eat a Lightning Bolt on this Chrysalis. Blood Token away, a Fiery Temper, so they throw it at the Chrysalis. I could sack 2 spawn Chromatic Star to Deadly Dispute the Chrysalis, which I thought about, but decided ultimately we're trying to win off of a Rites here, so I'd rather keep the creatures around. They discard another Snacker with a Blood Token, so they get them both back. Pretty good for them. We're going to Deadly Dispute the Star here. We need to draw something good. Find a Goblin Surprise. Not amazing. We're going to play our Wellspring. and play a Drawsforge Bridge, attack for 2 here, and just pass. We have a Goblin Surprise, so we could deal, what is this, 10 damage total next turn, plus a Galvanic Blast is 4 more, so maybe if they don't gain life and have no blockers, we could get them with like another Galvanic Blast, or obviously a Rites or something. They Kitchen Imp and attack with everything, so here's our chance. We do Galvanic Blast the Kitchen Imp, so we're not going for that play, but we can maybe just get them with the Rites. Unfortunately, even though we were conservative and killed the Kitchen Imp, they just have Lightning Bolt, Galvanic Blast, and we die anyway. Game 2, we get to bring in our 3 Gorilla Shamans, 2 of our Rotten Reunions, as well as our Cast into the Fires. Some nice Artifact hate and Graveyard hate for the sneaky snackers. We take out a Fanatical, an Ichor Wellspring, a couple Rites of Initiation because they go pretty fast, and we take out all our Goblin Surprises as well. This hand is okay. We have our mana. Cast into the Fire can be pretty good. Fanatical can be decent. We do have a Khalni Garden for the Fanatical. You want to keep the plant tokens around as long as you can, but you also shouldn't be afraid to sack them to a Fanatical if you don't have another target. They play an Epicure into another Epicure, into a Jagged Barrens. We're just going to cycle this Oliphant to find an untapped red land, pass, play our tap land, and pass back to them. We have a Fanatical up for this plant, probably. Or I could just cast into the fire both their 1/1s, which I decide to do. I think that's not really the reason we put it in the deck. It's mostly for the exile of a land, but they had 2 1/1s. I think it's a nice use of it. We get to start putting down Chrysalises now. They don't have any creatures and 4 cards in hand, so ideally the Chrysalises can get there. They play an Epicure and nothing else. They could have a lot of madness stuff, though. We get a Kuldotha Rebirth. We're going to play a Chrysalis off of 1 spawn, so we can leave up a Fanatical Offering or a Galvanic Blast, and then crack in for 3 here. And decide just to go on the offensive and Fanatical Offering away another spawn, so we actually hit for 5, putting them to 17. They crack a Blood, discarding a Fiery Temper to our face. We're down to 10. We did draw Rites of Initiation, so we might be able to use that next turn. Blood token away a Faithless Looting. They're looking for more burn. Blood token away a Vault of Whispers. Jagged Barrens us to 9. And they just pass here. We get a Chromatic Star. So we're going to start with a Fanatical Offering. Draws us an extra. We get a Deadly Dispute. That draws us even more. So we can definitely Rites here for lethal. We're going to Deadly Dispute first. Get an extra card. Rites of Initiation. Pitch 7 cards. And they have a Lightning Bolt for our Chrysalis. And then another Lightning Bolt to finish it off, actually putting them only down to 3, but they have 2 cards in hand and we're at 9 life. They do grab the prize Kitchen Imp though, so actually they could definitely get us here if they draw well enough. But they pass, leaving their guy back, so clearly they didn't get there. We get a Goblin Bushwhacker, which is a nice one off the top. It's going to allow us to deal 4 damage around their Kitchen Imp. So pretty close one. That's a time where Rites of Initiation worked out, I would say, but it didn't actually kill them. It's just that we were able to survive because they ditched a couple Lightning Bolts, but if they had just drawn a little bit better, they definitely could have gotten us there in the end. Game 3 here, and we have a pretty bad hand, I'm not going to lie. No artifacts for this Kuldotha, nothing to play before turn 4. I think we should mulligan this one, and we do, luckily. I couldn't remember, to be honest, and I was like, this is going to be so embarrassing if we don't. Then again, our 6-card hand is pretty risky too. Only 1 land, but like I said, Chromatic Star Kuldotha, I think you can keep sometimes. On a 6-card hand, I'm usually going to keep this, even though it is risky. So we're going to get rid of 1 Galvanic Blast and hope that we draw some tap lands. That tap for black, preferably. We're going to play Chromatic Star. We didn't draw a land yet, and they Trespassers Curse us, which is honestly really annoying. Right before we Kuldotha Rebirth them, pretty annoying, I will say. So pinged for 3 off of that. We did draw Gorilla Shaman, which could pick off their Great Furnace, but until we draw a land, we can't do that in the same turn. So for now, we're just passing back to them. They have another Curse and hit us with the Barrens. I mean, we are a token deck. This Curse is a card that, in general, every time I see my opponents bring it in, I think it usually sucks. We are probably the best deck to play it against, and I mean that even including mono red Kuldotha. We make even more tokens than they do. So we get to attack for 3 here, but we didn't draw another land. We drew a Bushwhacker, so we're just going to play the Gorilla Shaman, hope we can take out some lands next turn. And of course, they drew their entire sideboard. So they Elect Trickery our board and play another Trespasser's Curse. Every creature we play, and it's now 3 pings. We can't play more than 4 more creatures for the whole game, not to mention whatever lightning bolts they throw at us. And we draw another non-land card. So they grab the prize, throw a Fiery Temper at us. We're down to 9, which means only 2 creatures that we could play for this whole game. We draw our Great Furnace finally, and I cast into the fire one of their creatures. My only thought is, I don't even know what I'm thinking. I could Bushwhacker, but if I Bushwhacker, it's going to take 25 turns to kill them with it. They basically are just passing back to us. We get a Wellspring, so we can play that. We find a land, so we can play that. But like this Chrysalis kills us. And then they have a Lightning Bolt and another Lightning Bolt. We can't play a single creature now, so we play a Wellspring, and we just concede. Because that's ridiculous. It was both the fact that we were stuck on 1 land and that they had so many curses. Even if it was just 1 or maybe even 2 of the curses, we could have maybe gotten there. 3 was just absolutely brutal. The Elect Trickery was backbreaking. And if we had been able to pick off, if we had even just 1 more land, so we could have picked off a Great Furnace or a Vault of Whispers and then, gotten in under the 3rd curse with some of our creatures, it could have been okay. But unfortunately did not get there against Rakdos Madness, or rather curses. So round 5 here, feeling uneasy after that loss to the curses. But nothing settles the stomach quite like a perfect opening hand. Nice rainbow of colors. Ichor Wellspring and Deadly Dispute and a Bushwhacker to boot. So we're going to keep this one for sure. I often like to play our Khalni Garden later so that we can either Deadly Dispute the token or also just because we don't need the green mana until turn 4 usually. Or rather always, since that's our only green drop. So usually I like to play Khalni Garden on turn 3, I would say. We Wellspring, draw some cards. Looks like we're against Affinity here. And they're not, anytime my Affinity opponent doesn't have red mana in the first couple cards, I smile, because that means no Galvanic Blast, no Krark Clan Shamans, no makeshift munitions that we have to deal with, which always is good for me. We play that plant token, or rather the Khalni Garden it spawns from. They Deadly Dispute to be able to hit their lands, but it's another Seat of the Synod. Candy Trail to scry, 1 top, so maybe they found their red. We get to Deadly Dispute our Wellspring on the end step here. Find a Rites of Initiation, and a Kuldotha. So we are actually able to Kuldotha, Bushwhacker, and Rites of Initiation right here. With 5 creatures, even if they have a Galvanic off of this treasure token, we can push through lethal. So they don't, and they go to -14 off of a really, really good draw. From the sideboard, we get to bring in our 3 Gorilla Shamans and our 2 Cast Into the Fires. We take out 2 Galvanic Blasts, because we don't need that much removal against them, and our 3 Goblin Surprises. And we get this beautiful opener, and by that I mean it stinks. Chrysalis is great in the stack, it's great everywhere, but you really only want 1 in your opening hand, if even that. Happy to see more of them later in the game, but not here. We do have a Gorilla Shaman, which is nice, but I just don't think this is quite keepable. So we're going to throw it back, and we get another hand quite a bit better, and still with a Gorilla Shaman. So I like to see that. Kuldotha, Ichor Wellspring, we have our green, we have our black from the Oliphant, so we're going to get rid of a Great Furnace here. They start with a Vault of Whispers, so a good sign for the Gorilla Shaman, but we're going to probably save it until turn 2 or 3. Play a Seat of the Synod, so no bridges yet. Play a Wellspring. We draw another Gorilla Shaman, so I decide just to play out a Shaman and blow up the vault. Usually I would have saved it till turn 3, and honestly I probably still should have. I probably should have cycled the Oliphant for our black source, played that, and then played nothing here. And then next turn I could just Gorilla Shaman. But I figure even if they kill this, I can play the Gorilla Shaman next turn and still blow up the Seat of the Synod. They play a Mistfall Bridge. They do have the Blue Blast for the Gorilla Shaman. We draw Deadly Dispute, so awkwardly, and why I probably shouldn't have done it this way, is I now have to cycle the Oliphant if I want to hit my land drop for a mono red source, not a black source, so it's untapped. So I can play out the Gorilla Shaman and blow up the Seat of the Synod. Now, if they had left up their blue elemental blast and been able to stop the Gorilla Shaman initially, they actually might have had their lands around. So maybe I did it right. It just feels a little awkward because this Gorilla Shaman 1-drop was only a 2-for-1 instead of a 3-for-1. In any case, we blow up their land. They have the other blue blast, but they don't have another land drop. We have an Ichor Wellspring, which finds us a chromatic star, but we're just going to Kuldotha Rebirth the Wellspring. Luckily, we find our Twisted Landscape, which is pretty nice. and we get to pass to them. Landscape can now sack to find our black source. They have a Blood Fountain, so they have something, but no lands. Still, we're going to crack the Landscape for our swamp. We get a Khalni Garden, and we're just going to slam down a Chrysalis, play our Khalni Garden, and attack for 3. If we find any way to pump our creatures, we're hitting for a Chromillion, but they do not hit their land drop once again, and they scoop it up. And there we had a nice 4-1 with the deck. Like I said, still pining for that trophy. I think we can get there because the deck feels really good. And the only match loss that we had was because we had a bad opening hand, mulliganed to 6, and didn't keep a very good one, into our opponent drawing 4 of their sideboard cards. Unlucky, it happens, but I think we could definitely win a trophy with this deck. Please let me know if you have any suggestions for it, because I'm sure I didn't find the perfect configuration for the deck right out of the gate, because this is pretty much how my first draft went, but it feels really good right now, and I'm not really sure what to change. I could see the Goblin Surprises being replaced by something, and I'm open to that, but I just don't know what. I haven't found any cards that feel better. I feel like we have a pretty good ratio of token makers to pump spells to card draw, and I'm open to whatever, but the deck feels really good right now. Of course, the sideboard can always use some more tweaking. I might even want to go up more Pyroblasts. I know we didn't lose a match to a blue deck this time, but that is the deck archetype that we feel the worst against usually. So let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.